Joining me to take this further is Mr. John Veihmeyer. He's the Global Chairman for KPMG International. Good to have you with us today, sir.
Thanks very much. It's great to have being on.
Great to have you with us. You have been named as one of the top most influential people in accounting, which gives me promise because I studied accounting, but I have a long way to go before I follow your footsteps. But to pick up on some of the themes and the panel discussion you took part in this morning, informal is the new formal. Walk us through some of the key highlights that came through in that conversation this morning.
You know, it was a really interesting discussion. I think the highlights for me were people like to talk about formal versus informal, and one of the points I made is I think it's much more complex than that, like most things in life are. You know, many people participating in the formal economy are also playing significant parts in the informal economy, and there's much more crossover. They're not two separate, distinct economies. And secondly, I think a lot of people like to talk about it as how do we incorporate the informal economy into the formal? Yeah. And I think the issue is more, how do we make sure they're both growing? The reality is the informal economy is a huge part of the economy in Africa. It is going to be for a long time in the future, and what we ought to be doing is focusing on how do we encourage and stimulate the growth in the informal sector just as much as we are in the formal sector.
What about the risks associated with this, John? Because it almost seems as though you need to monitor the progress, you need the data to be able to analyze what is unfolding there, and obviously you don't want any further risk regarding corruption or potential losses and damage to the informal sector. How do we control that?
You know, it's a great question, and I think there are clearly some risks with the informal sector that are more controllable in the formal sector. So. All of which you just mentioned. So I think those are realities. I think we have to deal with them as effectively as we can, but at the same time recognize that I think much of the growth into the formal sector is going to come from the informal sector. This is a journey and an evolution people are on, and if we can get people starting businesses, building entrepreneurship, and creating opportunities for employment in the informal sector, and that grows, and eventually they evolve into a more formal part of the economic infrastructure, then that's really a positive.
This obviously calls for a renewed focus again on the youth, because more than 3/4 of the African population is made up of individuals under the age of 35. How do we include them in this evolution?
That's going to be critical. I mean, the future of, I think, the African economy is making sure that we deal with this, whether it's a demographic dividend or the youth bulge, whatever it's commonly referred to as, that's going to make or break this economy over the next number of decades. And frankly, by 2050, 1/3 of the world's youth are going to be on the African continent. So this continent's ability to incorporate its young people into the economy in a productive way, and frankly to help young people feel like they're a part of the economy, that they have the aspiration and the inspiration to achieve and to realize that they can be part of the success of Africa, I think is the real challenge for the leaders, both business and government, in the economy here in Africa.
It almost seems as though we also need to encourage them to develop the necessary critical thinking skills to be able to be trailblazers and become entrepreneurs. How do we balance that with the need for capital, the need for mentorship, as well as a social protection where these people need the decent wages in order to get by?
Well, there's no silver bullet answer to any of this. I think what it requires, like any complex issue that's trying to address a complex problem that frankly has evolved over a very long period of time. We're not going to solve it overnight, but we've got to be making progress and measuring that progress along the way. So I think all of the things you just alluded to, we have to do right. We have to train people in entrepreneurship. We have to help our young people in Africa learn the ways that they can take advantage of the infrastructure that is in place, the microfinance opportunities that may be there, the opportunity in villages to pool savings in a way that can encourage small business formation in those villages, while they're using some of the more formal government-sponsored and business-sponsored initiatives and programs as well. So it's a combination of, I think, business, the government, and frankly, local leaders combining to figure out how do we pull all of the levers that we have at our disposal to make sure we create an environment where young people can succeed in Africa.
Mm-hmm. You obviously sit as the global chairman of KPMG International, so not only do you know what's happening across the globe, but you've got a keen eye for what's developing on the African continent. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here today. Maybe if you can walk us through where we're seeing opportunities of value and which African economies are seeing significant flows when it comes to their markets.
Well, I'm here for the World Economic Forum in Cape Town because of the importance of the African economy to KPMG. This is a really important part of our practice globally. It's one of our fastest growing, and frankly, over the next 10 to 20 years, I think it will be one of the most important practices within KPMG globally. So critical for us, and I think that's reflective of the opportunity that the companies that we work with see in Africa as well. Most of the CEOs that I meet with, and I get to spend a lot of my time out with the CEOs of the major companies across the globe,
wow,
they are excited about the opportunity that Africa presents. And it's not so much which local economy. Certainly Nigeria is a rapidly growing, I think, economy for our clients and certainly for KPMG. South Africa, we see a lot of opportunity as well. But the bigger story is what do we see from a continent standpoint, and how do we get regional cooperation happening within Africa to take advantage of the resources, the skills, the talents in one country within Africa, leveraging the skills, resources from another nearby country. And I think our approach within KPMG is to try and drive a much more regional focus and not focus so much on the discrete assets within any particular country, but look at the opportunities presented by pooling our resources and frankly helping our clients take advantage of the pooled resources from across sub-regions within Africa.
I hope there are a lot of government ministers who've been paying attention to what you've been saying. Thank you so much, John, for your time today. A fantastic opportunity and time speaking to you.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Anytime. That was John Veihmeyer, who is the global chairman of KPMG International, giving